The transport ship Wandering Fortune dropped out of hyperspace with a shudder that rattled through its aging hull. Captain Marcus Webb gripped his command chair and watched the viewscreen fill with the swirling orange clouds of Nexar Prime, a frontier world that sat at the edge of known space. The planet below was home to mining colonies, trading posts, and the kind of people who didn't ask too many questions about where you came from or what you were running from. "Docking clearance received," announced First Officer Chen, her fingers dancing across the navigation console. "Bay 17, they're charging us double the standard fee." Webb grunted. "Everything costs double out here on the frontier. Pay it. We need supplies, and the crew needs shore leave." The Wandering Fortune was a cargo hauler that had seen better days. Its paint was chipped, its engines wheezed, and half its systems needed repairs that Webb couldn't afford. But it was home to a crew of 47 souls who trusted him to keep them fed and flying. That responsibility weighed on him every single day. As the ship descended through the atmosphere, Webb reviewed the crew manifest on his personal datapad. They'd picked up 3 new hands at Orbital Station 12, all of them looking for passage and willing to work. 2 were unremarkable. Former miners looking for new opportunities, but the third one made him pause. Kira Vance, human female. Age listed as 26 standard years. No employment history, no family contacts, no medical records beyond the basic scan required for ship passage. The woman was a ghost, existing only in the present moment with nothing trailing behind her. Webb remembered the day she'd walked onto his ship. She'd stood in the cargo bay with a single bag over her shoulder, wearing clothes that were clean but obviously second-hand. Her dark hair was cut short and practical. Her face carried no expression at all. When Webb had asked her what skills she could offer, she'd simply pointed at the cargo containers and then at the loading equipment. She hadn't spoken a single word. At first, Webb assumed she was shy. Then he thought maybe she didn't speak standard. But over the following weeks, he'd come to understand that Kira Vance simply did not talk. Not to him, not to the other crew members, not to anyone. She communicated through nods, gestures, and occasionally through written messages on her datapad. The ship's doctor, old Samuel Wright, had examined her and found nothing physically wrong with her vocal cords. She could speak if she wanted to. She simply chose not to. The crew had mixed reactions to their silent member. Some found her unnerving. They whispered that she was hiding something dark. Others respected her privacy and left her alone. A few, like young Tommy Reeves who worked in the galley, had taken it as a personal challenge to make her laugh or speak. So far, Tommy had failed completely, though Kira seemed to tolerate his attempts with something that might have been amusement. Webb watched Kira work during those early weeks. She lifted cargo containers that should have required 2 people. She operated the loading equipment with precision that suggested military training. When a fight broke out between 2 crew members over a gambling debt, Kira had been standing nearby. She hadn't moved to intervene, but something about her stillness had made both men stop and walk away. They later told Webb they couldn't explain why. They just looked at her and suddenly felt like fighting was a very bad idea. The Wandering Fortune settled into docking bay 17 with a groan of metal. Webb ordered standard shore leave rotation and watched his crew file out into the station. Kira was among the last to leave. She paused at the airlock and looked back at Webb with those dark, unreadable eyes. Then she nodded once and disappeared into the crowds of Nexar Prime. Webb found himself wondering what she did during shore leave. Where did a woman who never spoke go when she had time to herself? The answer came 3 days later, and it changed everything. Webb was in a drinking establishment called the Rusty Comet, nursing a glass of something that was probably alcohol mixed with engine coolant. The bar was crowded with miners, traders, and the occasional mercenary looking for work. Music played from somewhere, fighting against the roar of conversation. Webb was thinking about fuel costs and wondering if he could negotiate a better rate when the door crashed open. 4 men walked in. They weren't miners or traders. They wore matching black uniforms with no insignia, and they moved with the coordinated precision of trained soldiers. Their leader was a tall man with a shaved head and a scar that ran from his forehead to his chin. He scanned the room with eyes that missed nothing. "Looking for someone," the scarred man announced. His voice cut through the noise like a blade. "Human female. Dark hair. Doesn't talk. Anyone seen her?" The bar went quiet. People on frontier worlds didn't answer questions from men who looked like these. The scarred man seemed to expect this. He nodded to his companions, and they began moving through the crowd, checking faces, shoving people aside. Webb stayed very still. He had a bad feeling in his stomach, and it had nothing to do with the questionable alcohol. One of the black uniformed men reached a table near the back. He stopped and smiled, showing teeth that had been filed to points. Found her. Webb turned his head slightly. He could see Kira sitting alone at the table, a glass of water in front of her. She wasn't looking at the man who had found her. She was looking at nothing, her face completely blank. Kira Vance, the scarred leader said, walking toward her table. Or should I call you by your real name? The one they gave you in the program? Kira didn't respond. She didn't even acknowledge that he had spoken, silent as ever. The scarred man pulled out a chair and sat across from her. The consortium has been looking for you for 3 years. Do you have any idea how much money they've spent? How many agents they've deployed? You've become quite the legend. The one who got away. Still nothing from Kira. She might have been a statue carved from stone. Here's how this works, the scarred man continued. You come with us quietly, and we don't have to hurt anyone in this bar. We don't have to hurt the crew of that pathetic cargo ship you've been hiding on. We just take you back. They finish what they started, and everyone else gets to keep living their small, meaningless lives. Kira finally moved. She picked up her glass of water and took a small sip. Then she set it down and looked at the scarred man for the first time. Something passed between them. Webb couldn't see Kira's face from his angle, but he saw the scarred man's expression flicker. Just for a moment, something like fear crossed his features before he controlled it. Don't try anything stupid, the scarred man said, but his voice had lost some of its confidence. There are 4 of us and 1 of you. Even for someone with your training. Those aren't good odds. Kira reached into her pocket. The 3 other men immediately drew weapons. She pulled out her datapad and typed something. Then she turned the screen so the scarred man could read it. Webb couldn't see what it said from where he sat, but he saw the scarred man's face go pale. The man read the message, then read it again. His hand trembled slightly as he pushed back from the table. That's not possible, the scarred man said. They decommissioned that designation. The council ruled that the project was too dangerous to continue. No one carries that name anymore, Kira typed again. This time when she showed the screen, the scarred man actually flinched. We're leaving, the scarred man announced to his team. He stood up so fast his chair fell over. We're leaving right now. But sir, one of his men protested, the bounty. I don't care about the bounty. The scarred man was already moving toward the door. I'm not dying in some frontier bar for any amount of money. That's not Kira Vance. He couldn't finish the sentence. He just shook his head and kept walking. The 4 men in black left the rusty Comet like the building was on fire. The door swung shut behind them, and slowly the bar returned to its normal noise and activity. People glanced at the woman sitting alone in the back, then quickly looked away. Webb stayed in his seat for a long moment. His mind was racing with questions he knew he might never get answers to. What name had Kira shown them? What was the program they mentioned? What could possibly make 4 armed soldiers run away from a single silent woman? He finished his drink and walked over to Kira's table. She watched him approach without expression. Webb pulled out the chair the scarred man had abandoned and sat down across from her. I'm not going to ask what that was about, Webb said quietly. Everyone on my crew has secrets. I don't pry into them, but I need to know one thing. Are they going to come back? Are they going to threaten my ship and my people? Kira considered the question. Then she shook her head once. No, how can you be sure? Kira picked up her datapad and typed. She turned the screen toward Webb. It read, They fear the name more than they want the money. What name? Webb asked, before he could stop himself. Kira just looked at him. Her eyes held something that might have been sadness, or might have been warning. She didn't type anything else. Webb nodded slowly. All right, keep your secrets. Just keep my crew safe. Kira typed one more message. She turned the screen toward him, and Webb felt a chill run down his spine despite the warmth of the bar. The message read, I always protect what is mine. Webb returned to the ship that night and told no one what he had witnessed. But he watched Kira more carefully after that. He noticed things he had missed before. The way she positioned herself with her back to walls, the way her eyes tracked every exit in any room she entered, the way she never truly slept, always alert even when she appeared to be resting. And he noticed something else. The crew members who had been wary of her began to treat her differently. Word had spread, as word always did on a ship. People knew something had happened at the Rusty Comet. They didn't know the details, but they sensed that Kira Vance was not just another worker looking for passage. Tommy Reeves from the galley was the first to adjust his behavior. He stopped trying to make her laugh and started bringing her extra portions at meals. He did this without comment, without expectation. Kira accepted the offerings with a slight nod that Tommy seemed to treasure. Old Dr. Wright began leaving medical supplies outside Kira's quarters. Bandages, antiseptic, painkillers. Things she might need if she was ever hurt and didn't want to come to the infirmary. The supplies always disappeared, and occasionally Wright would find useful items left in return. A bottle of genuine Earth whiskey, a data chip containing medical research that wasn't available through normal channels. First Officer Chen started consulting Kira during navigation decisions. She didn't ask for input verbally, but she would bring up route options on screens near where Kira was working. If Kira tapped one option, Chen would choose that route. If Kira did nothing, Chen would make her own choice. Chen never explained why she had started doing this, and no one asked. The Wandering Fortune continued its work, hauling cargo from station to station, planet to planet. Weeks turned into months. Kira remained silent, but she was no longer separate from the crew. She had become part of them in a way that defied explanation. Webb understood something important during this time. Kira was not hiding on his ship. She was not running from her past. She was simply waiting. For what? He didn't know, but he had the growing sense that when the moment came, everything would change. That moment arrived on a cold morning in the dead of space, when the Wandering Fortune received a distress signal that would reveal the truth about their silent crew member. The signal came from a colony transport called the Bright Dawn. According to the automated message, the ship had suffered a catastrophic engine failure and was drifting without power. There were over 200 civilians on board, including children. They had 12 hours of emergency air remaining. Webb didn't hesitate. He ordered the Wandering Fortune to maximum speed and pushed the old engines harder than they'd been pushed in years. His ship wasn't equipped for rescue operations, but he wasn't going to let 200 people die while he had the ability to help. "Captain," Chen said as they approached the coordinates, "I'm picking up something strange on the sensors. There's another ship near the Bright Dawn. Much bigger than us. Military configuration. Identification?" Chen's face went pale. "Consortium heavy cruiser, the Relentless." "Captain, the Consortium doesn't do rescue operations. They do enforcement and extraction. Something's very wrong here." Webb felt the cold certainty of a trap closing around him. But the distress signal was still broadcasting. Those 200 civilians were still dying. He couldn't just turn away. "Take us in," he ordered. "But be ready to run if things go bad." The Wandering Fortune dropped out of faster-than-light travel near the drifting Bright Dawn. The colony transport was dark and lifeless, exactly as the distress signal had described. But the consortium cruiser was very much alive, its weapons trained on the cargo hauler the moment it appeared. "Wandering Fortune," a voice crackled over the communication system. "This is Commander Thrace of the Consortium Enforcement Division. You will cut your engines and prepare to be boarded. If you comply, your crew will not be harmed." Webb gripped his command chair. "This is Captain Marcus Webb. We responded to a distress signal from the Bright Dawn. We're here to help with rescue operations." "There is no distress," Commander Thrace replied. "The signal was bait. We knew that if we cast a wide enough net, eventually we would catch what we were fishing for." "We know she's on your ship, Captain. The one who doesn't speak. The one who escaped the program 3 years ago. Surrender her to us, and you can leave freely. Refuse, and we will board your vessel by force. All of your crew will be detained for aiding a fugitive. Think carefully about your next words." Webb looked around his bridge. His crew stared back at him with fear in their eyes. 47 lives hanging on his decision. Against a consortium heavy cruiser with enough firepower to reduce the Wandering Fortune to atoms. The bridge door opened. Kira walked in. She moved with purpose, her steps steady and sure. The fear in the room seemed to recede as she approached the communication console. She looked at Webb and nodded once. Then she pressed the button to transmit. For a long moment, there was only silence. Then Kira opened her mouth and spoke for the first time since she had joined the crew of the Wandering Fortune. Her voice was rough from years of disuse, but clear, strong. It carried the weight of a truth that had been buried too long. "Commander Thrace," Kira said, "my name is not Kira Vance. I was never given that name. I was never given any name at all. In the program, they took our names away. They said names were weaknesses. They gave us designations instead. Numbers and letters that told them which modifications we had received, which protocols we had been trained in, which missions we were designed to complete." Webb and his crew watched in stunned silence. After months of nothing, Kira's voice was like thunder after endless calm. "But soldiers talk," Kira continued. "They give each other names that the officers don't know about. Names that mean something. Names that are earned. In the barracks and the training facilities, the other subjects started calling me something. A name that spread through whispers until even the highest commanders heard it. A name that made them afraid." She paused. When she spoke again, her voice was colder than the void between stars. "They called me the Silence, not because I don't speak, because when I am finished with my enemies, no one is left to scream." The communication channel crackled with static. Then Commander Thrace's voice returned, and Webb could hear the change in it. The arrogance was gone. What remained was the voice of a man trying very hard not to show terror. "The Silence was reported killed during the Facility 7 incident. The Council lied," Kira interrupted. "They lied because they were afraid of what I would do if people knew I was still alive. They were right to be afraid. I have spent 3 years watching, learning, remembering every person who ordered my creation, every scientist who cut into my brain, every commander who used me as a weapon against innocent people. I have a list, Commander. A very long list." She looked at Webb. "These people gave me something I never had before. A home. A family. They accepted me without questions, protected me without asking for anything in return. So I am going to give you a choice, Commander. The same choice I gave those soldiers in the bar. You can turn your ship around and fly away. You can pretend you never found me. You can live the rest of your lives knowing that the Silence remembered your names but chose to show mercy." Her eyes returned to the communication console. "Or you can try to take me. You can send your soldiers onto this ship and see what happens when you wake something that was designed to destroy entire enemy installations single-handedly. I have been quiet for 3 years. I have been peaceful, but I remember everything they taught me, everything they made me become. If you force me to be that thing again, I will leave no witnesses, no survivors, no evidence that you ever existed at all." The silence stretched out. Seconds felt like hours. Then Commander Thrace's voice came through one final time. "All vessels, break contact. I repeat, break contact. This target is classified as unrecoverable. Return to base." On the view screen, the consortium heavy cruiser powered up its engines and turned away. Within minutes, it had jumped to faster than light speed and disappeared. The bridge of the Wandering Fortune remained quiet. The crew stared at Kira with a mixture of awe and something approaching fear. She had saved them, but she had also revealed herself as something more than human, something created in laboratories and trained in nightmares. Kira looked at Captain Webb. Something soft crossed her features, something almost vulnerable. She typed on her datapad and showed him the screen. "I understand if you want me to leave." Webb read the message. Then he laughed, surprising everyone on the bridge, including himself. "Leave? After that performance?" He shook his head. "You just faced down a consortium heavy cruiser without firing a single shot. You're the most valuable crew member I've got." He stood and walked toward her. "I don't care what they made you. I care what you choose to be. And you just chose to protect 47 people who have nothing to offer you except their trust. That's all I need to know." Kira's expression didn't change, but something shifted in her eyes. A tension that had been there since she first walked onto the ship seemed to ease slightly. She typed another message. "It will not be the last time they come. Then we'll deal with it," Webb said. "Together. That's what a crew does." Around the bridge, the other crew members nodded. They had seen what their silent member truly was. They had learned that she carried a name that made soldiers run in fear. and they had watched her risk everything to protect them. Tommy Reeves stepped forward from where he had been lurking near the door. "So," he said, his voice only slightly shaky, "does this mean I can call you Silence? Because that's actually a really cool name." Kira looked at him. The corner of her mouth twitched, just slightly, almost imperceptibly. It might have been a smile. She typed on her datapad and showed him the screen. "Only if you keep bringing me extra dessert." Tommy's face split into a grin. "Deal?" The tension broke. People laughed, talked, processed what had happened. The wandering fortune continued on its way through the vast emptiness of space, carrying its crew toward whatever challenges waited ahead. And in the midst of it all stood a woman who had been created as a weapon, who had been given a name that inspired terror, who had spent 3 years hiding in silence. But for the first time in her existence, she was also something else. She was home. The galaxy was vast and dangerous. The consortium was powerful and vengeful. The list of enemies who wanted the Silence dead grew longer with each passing day. But Kira had something now that she had never had before. She had people who saw past the horror of her creation. People who valued her not for what she could destroy, but for who she was choosing to become. Webb returned to his command chair and began issuing orders to get them underway. The bright dawn had been a trap. But there might be real ships in distress out there. Real people who needed help. That was what the Wandering Fortune did. They helped people who had nowhere else to turn. Kira took up her usual position near the bridge door, watching everything, saying nothing. But now the crew understood her silence differently. It wasn't coldness or distance. It was control. Every moment she chose not to speak was a moment she was choosing to be something other than what they had designed her to be. The stars stretched out ahead of them, infinite and uncaring. Somewhere out there, powerful forces were beginning to move. The consortium would not accept defeat. They had invested too much in the program, in the subjects they had created, in the weapons they had forged from human beings. They would come again, but when they did, they would find that the Silence was no longer alone. She had a ship, she had a crew, she had a family, and that made her more dangerous than ever. 6 months passed after the confrontation with Commander Thrace and the consortium cruiser. The Wandering Fortune continued its work along the frontier shipping lanes, hauling cargo and occasionally picking up passengers who needed transport to distant stations. Life settled into a comfortable routine, and the crew began to believe that maybe, just maybe, they had seen the last of the trouble. They were wrong. The message arrived on a foggy morning at Waystation Delta, a massive orbital platform that served as a trading hub for 3 different sectors. Captain Webb was reviewing supply manifests in his quarters when First Officer Chen knocked on his door with an expression that told him something was very wrong. "Captain, we received a coded transmission, military encryption. It was addressed specifically to our ship, using our registration numbers and your personal identification code." Webb frowned. He hadn't served in any military for 15 years. Anyone who knew those codes was reaching back into a past he preferred to forget. "What does it say?" Chen handed him a datapad. "It's a set of coordinates and a time. There's also a phrase at the bottom. It says, 'The old debts are being collected. Meet us or watch everything burn.'" The coordinates pointed to an uninhabited moon in a dead system, the kind of place where ships went to disappear. The time was 3 days from now. "It's obviously a trap," Chen said. "Obviously." Webb stared at the message, his mind turning over possibilities. "But whoever sent this knew exactly how to get my attention. Those codes haven't been valid in over a decade. Someone's been digging through very old records." He looked up at Chen. "Where's Kira?" "Cargo Bay 2. She's been reorganizing the storage containers since dawn." Webb found Kira exactly where Chen said she would be. She was moving heavy containers with the quiet efficiency that characterized everything she did. When Webb approached, she stopped and turned to face him, her dark eyes questioning. He showed her the datapad with the message. He had learned to read her subtle expressions over the past months, and he saw her eyes narrow slightly as she processed the information. Her jaw tightened by a fraction. "You know something about this," Webb said. It wasn't a question. Kira took the datapad and typed her response. "The old debts. It is a phrase from the program. They used it when calling in favors from outside contacts, people who had been compromised or bribed into helping the consortium. So this is connected to your past. Everything is connected to my past," she typed again. But this message was not sent for me. It was sent for you. Someone wants you specifically, and they are using the program's methods to do it. Webb felt cold creep into his chest. He had spent years building a new life, running a legitimate cargo operation, staying away from the kind of work that got people killed. But the past was patient. The past could wait. I need to go to that meeting, Webb said quietly. If I don't, whoever sent this might come after the ship. After the crew. Kira's expression shifted. Something fierce entered her eyes. Something that reminded Webb of the woman who had faced down a consortium cruiser with nothing but her voice and her reputation. She typed rapidly. I am coming with you. This isn't your fight. Kira looked at him with an intensity that made his words feel hollow. She typed again. This crew is my family. You are part of that family. Your fight is my fight. Webb started to argue, but Kira held up her hand. She typed one more message, and when Webb read it, he felt something shift in his understanding of the woman who had chosen to make his ship her home. I was silent for 3 years because I was trying to forget what I am. I hid because I was afraid that if I used my skills again, I would become the monster they created. But I have learned something from watching you and this crew. A weapon is only as evil as the hand that wields it. If I choose to use what they made me for something good, then I am not their creation anymore. I am my own. Webb read the message twice. Then he nodded slowly. All right, we do this together. They spent the next 2 days preparing. Webb told the crew that they had a special cargo run that required discretion. Most of the crew accepted this without question. Life on the frontier often involved jobs that were better left unexamined. But a few of them sensed that something bigger was happening. Tommy Reeves approached Kira while she was checking equipment in the armory. The young cook had lost some of his boyish energy in the months since the consortium confrontation. He had grown more serious, more aware of the dangers that surrounded their small ship. You're going somewhere dangerous, he said. It wasn't a question. Kira nodded. Can I do anything to help? She considered him for a long moment. Then she typed on her datapad. Keep the ship running. Keep the crew calm. If we do not return in 48 hours, take the wandering fortune and run. Do not come looking for us. Do not try to be heroes. Just survive. Tommy's face went pale, but he nodded. I understand. Kira reached out and put a hand on his shoulder. It was a rare gesture from her, a moment of physical contact that she almost never initiated. She typed one more message. You have been kind to me since the first day. You treated me like a person when others treated me like a puzzle to be solved. I will remember that. Whatever happens, the journey to the coordinates took 18 hours at maximum speed. Webb and Kira traveled in a small shuttle that could be detached from the main ship. The wandering fortune would wait at a safe distance, ready to flee or fight depending on how things unfolded. The moon was a barren rock orbiting a dying star. No atmosphere, no water, no reason for anyone to ever visit unless they specifically wanted to meet in a place where no one would hear what happened. The shuttle landed on a flat plain of gray dust, and Webb and Kira stepped out onto the surface in environmental suits. A ship was already waiting for them. Not a consortium vessel this time, but something older, a design that Webb recognized from his years in military service. It was a coalition special operations transport, the kind of ship that carried soldiers to places that officially didn't exist. I know that ship, Webb said quietly. Or at least I know what it used to be. 20 years ago, I served on vessels just like it. A figure emerged from the coalition ship, a woman in her 50s, her gray hair cut short, her bearing unmistakably military. She walked toward them with the confident stride of someone who had commanded troops in combat. Her face was familiar to Webb, though it took him a moment to place it. Marcus Webb, the woman said. You've gotten old. Admiral Chen. Webb felt the world tilt slightly as recognition hit. You're supposed to be dead. The reports said your entire task force was destroyed at the Battle of Nexus Prime. Reports lie. That's what they're for. The woman who had once been Admiral Sarah Chen of the Coalition Navy stopped a few meters away. Her eyes moved to Kira, and something flickered across her face. And you must be the one they call the Silence. I've heard stories about you. Some of them are probably even true. Kira said nothing. Her body was relaxed but ready, positioned so that she could move in any direction at a moment's notice. Webb recognized the stance. It was the posture of someone who could kill everyone present before they could blink. "Why did you call us here?" Webb demanded. "What's this about old debts?" Admiral Chen's expression grew serious. "The debt isn't yours, Marcus. It's mine. I owe you for what happened at Station Gamma 12. You saved my life and the lives of my crew when anyone else would have left us to die. I never got a chance to repay that. Until now. I don't understand. The consortium is planning something big. They've been gathering resources, recruiting scientists, building facilities in places that don't show up on any official charts. 3 weeks ago, one of my agents managed to intercept a partial transmission. The message contained a single word that made my blood run cold." She paused. Her eyes moved to Kira again. "Resurrection," she said. "They're calling it Project Resurrection. They want to rebuild the program. Everything that was shut down, everything that was declared too dangerous to continue. They want to bring it all back. And they want to do it on a scale that makes the original look like a small experiment." Kira went very still. Even through her environmental suit, Webb could see the tension that seized her body. "They don't have enough data to start from scratch," Admiral Chen continued. "The original scientists were executed after the Council shut everything down. The research facilities were destroyed. The only way they can rebuild is if they recover one of the original subjects, someone who carries the modified genetics, the neural programming, the combat protocols. Someone they can study and copy." She looked directly at Kira. "They're not going to stop hunting you. They're never going to stop. Because you're not just a escaped prisoner to them. You're the key to building an army of weapons just like you. Hundreds of them. Maybe thousands. All under their control." Webb felt sick. He had known that Kira's past was dark, but he hadn't fully understood the scale of what she represented. The consortium wasn't just trying to recapture an escaped subject. They were trying to build a force that could dominate entire systems. "Why are you telling us this?" Webb asked. "Because I have a proposal." Admiral Chen pulled a data chip from her pocket. "This contains the location of the main research facility where they're preparing Project Resurrection. It's heavily defended, hidden in deep space, and guarded by some of the most dangerous soldiers the consortium has. No official force will touch it because the consortium has too many politicians and admirals in their pocket. But an unofficial force, a small team with the right skills, they might be able to get in, destroy the research, and get out before anyone knows what happened. You want us to attack a consortium facility. I want you to prevent a nightmare." Admiral Chen's voice was hard. "I've spent 20 years watching from the shadows, while the galaxy's governments make deals with monsters. I'm tired of watching. I'm ready to act, and I have resources, ships, soldiers, supplies. Everything, except the one thing that can actually make a difference." Her eyes moved to Kira one final time. "I need someone who knows how they think, how they build, how they design their security. Someone who was inside the program and lived to escape. Someone who can walk through their defenses because she was trained to be the ultimate infiltrator." Kira stepped forward. Her movement was smooth, graceful, almost predatory. She stopped in front of Admiral Chen and studied the older woman with those dark, unreadable eyes. Then she typed on her datapad and held it up for Chen to read. "Why should I trust you? The Coalition funded the program in its early stages. Your government helped create me, and helped create all of us." Admiral Chen nodded slowly. "That's true. And it's one of the reasons I faked my death and went underground. I couldn't live with what we had done, what we had allowed to happen. I spent years trying to find ways to make up for it, helping escaped subjects disappear, destroying consortium operations when I could. But none of it was enough. None of it stopped the real threat." She met Kira's gaze without flinching. "I can't undo what was done to you. I can't give you back the childhood you never had or the life they stole. But I can give you a chance to make sure it never happens to anyone else. I can give you the opportunity to destroy the program forever." Kira was silent for a long moment. Then she typed again. "I need to think. I need to discuss this with my captain." Admiral Chen nodded. "Of course. Take the data chip. Study the information. Make your decision. But don't take too long. Project Resurrection is moving faster than we expected. If we're going to act, it needs to be soon." She turned and began walking back toward her ship. Then she paused and looked over her shoulder at Webb. "Take care of her, Marcus." She's more important than you know, and she's more fragile than she wants anyone to see. The coalition ship lifted off and disappeared into the darkness between stars. Webb and Kira stood alone on the barren moon, the weight of the galaxy pressing down on their shoulders. Webb looked at Kira. "What do you want to do?" Kira didn't answer immediately. She stared up at the stars, at the vast emptiness that had been her refuge for 3 years. Then she typed on her datapad, "I want to be free, truly free. Not just running and hiding. But that will never happen as long as the program exists. As long as they have the knowledge to create more like me." She looked at Webb. "I want to destroy them. I want to burn everything they built. But I am afraid of what I might become if I let myself do that. I am afraid of the silence." Webb understood. He had seen soldiers struggle with the same dilemma, the fear of losing themselves to the violence they were trained for. But he had also seen those soldiers find ways through, find purposes that transformed their skills from burdens into gifts. "You don't have to become the monster they made," he said quietly. "You can use what they gave you for your own reasons, to protect people, to stop suffering. That's not the same as becoming what they wanted you to be." "I am not sure I know the difference anymore." "Then let me help you find it. Let the crew help you. We're not going to let you face this alone." Kira looked at him with something that might have been hope, or might have been fear, or might have been both tangled together in a knot that she couldn't untie. She typed one final message. "If we do this, people will die. Consortium, soldiers, scientists, guards. They will stand in our way, and I will have to kill them. Can you accept that?" Webb thought about the colony ship that had been used as bait. He thought about the soldiers who had threatened his crew. He thought about all the unnamed victims of the program, the children who had been taken, the lives that had been destroyed, the horror that would be unleashed if Project Resurrection succeeded. "Some things are worth fighting for," he said. "Some things are worth killing for. I learned that a long time ago. The question isn't whether violence is sometimes necessary. The question is what you do with yourself after. Whether you let it define you, or whether you move past it." Kira absorbed his words. Then she nodded slowly. "We will need more than just us. The crew is not equipped for military operations. Admiral Chen said she has resources, soldiers, supplies, ships. If we're going to do this, we'll do it right. Then we do it." She typed the words with a certainty that surprised even her. "We end the program forever." They returned to the Wandering Fortune and spent the next several days studying the data chip Admiral Chen had provided. The information was extensive: floor plans of the facility, guard rotations, security protocols, the location of the main research servers, everything they would need to plan an attack. The facility was called Station Echo, and it was hidden in the debris field of a destroyed planet in a system that had been abandoned centuries ago. The consortium had built it in secret, using shell companies and black budget funds. On paper, it didn't exist. In reality, it was the heart of Project Resurrection. Admiral Chen arrived 3 days later with a small fleet of ships, not military vessels, at least not officially. They were converted freighters, modified shuttles, ships that looked like they belonged to smugglers and pirates, but the people aboard them were professionals, former Special Forces soldiers, intelligence operatives, combat medics, engineers who specialized in demolition and sabotage. Webb gathered his crew and explained the situation. He gave them a choice. They could stay with the ship and wait at a safe distance, or they could volunteer to participate in the mission. He made it clear that no one would be judged for staying behind. This wasn't what they had signed up for. To his surprise, most of the crew volunteered. Tommy Reeves was among the first. "You're not leaving without someone to cook proper meals," he said with a nervous smile. "Soldiers fight better when they're well fed." Old Dr. Wright stepped forward next. "You'll need medical support. Combat injuries are different from cargo accidents. I've seen enough of both to know." First Officer Chen came last, her expression grim but determined. "This ship goes where you go, Captain." "And so do I." Kira watched the crew volunteer with something unreadable in her eyes. These people owed her nothing. They had every reason to stay safe, to let someone else handle the violence and danger. But they were choosing to stand beside her, to face the nightmare of her past alongside her. She typed a message and showed it to the assembled crew. You do not know what you are volunteering for." Tommy looked at the message, then looked at Kira. "We know," he said simply. "We're coming anyway." The planning took another week. Admiral Chen's people were professional and thorough. They ran simulations, analyzed the facility's defenses, identified weaknesses that could be exploited. Kira contributed her knowledge of program protocols and security measures, typing her insights for the tactical team to incorporate. But the most important planning happened between Kira and Webb, late at night when the others were asleep. "You're going to have to go in first," Webb said during one of these sessions. "Alone. The facility has biometric scanners that will recognize your genetic markers. You're the only one who can get through the outer defenses without triggering alarms." Kira nodded. She had expected this. "Once you're inside, you'll need to disable the security grid so the rest of the team can follow. Can you do that?" She typed her response. "I can do anything they designed me to do. The question is whether I can do it without losing control." "What do you mean?" Kira hesitated. Then she typed a longer message, sharing something she had never told anyone. "When I was in the program, they trained me to access a mental state they called combat mode. It suppresses emotion, eliminates hesitation, maximizes efficiency. In that state, I am not Kira. I am not the silence. I am simply a weapon, acting on programming and instinct." Webb read the message with growing concern. "And you're afraid of what happens when you're in that state." "I am afraid of not being able to come back. Every time I access combat mode, I feel myself slipping a little further away. The person I want to be gets smaller. The weapon they made me gets stronger. If I go too deep, too often, I might not be able to return." Webb was quiet for a moment. Then he reached out and put his hand on Kira's shoulder. "Then we'll make sure you don't go alone. We'll give you anchors, reasons to come back. Things to hold on to when the darkness tries to pull you in." "How?" "By being there. By reminding you who you are, who you've become. The crew, the ship, the life you've built. Those things are real. They matter, and they're stronger than anything the program put inside you." Kira looked at him with eyes that glistened with something she would never admit was tears. "I want to believe that. Then believe it. And if you can't believe it for yourself, believe it for us. We're not going to let you disappear into what they made you. We're going to bring you back. Every time, no matter what." The fleet assembled in the dead system where Station Echo was hidden. 15 ships in total, carrying nearly 200 personnel. Not an army by any standard, but enough to hit hard and fast if everything went according to plan. Kira stood at the airlock of the Wandering Fortune, dressed in a combat suit that Admiral Chen's people had provided. It was black and form-fitting, designed for stealth and mobility. Weapons were strapped to her back and thighs. She looked like what she was, a soldier preparing for war. Tommy was there to see her off. He held out a small container wrapped in thermal foil. "Chocolate cookies," he said. "I baked them this morning, for when you get back. They're your favorite, right?" Kira took the container. She looked at Tommy, at this young man who had refused to give up on making her smile, who had stood by her even after learning what she truly was. She typed a message. "I will come back for these." "You better," Tommy said. "I used the good chocolate." Admiral Chen's voice came over the communication system. "All units, final positions. Operation Clean Slate commences in 15 minutes. Kira turned to Webb. He stood with the rest of the crew, all of them watching her with expressions that ranged from worried to determined to proud. She typed one last message. "Whatever happens in there, thank you. For everything." Then she turned and stepped into the airlock. The door closed behind her, and a moment later, she was floating through the void toward the massive structure that contained her worst nightmares. Station Echo was enormous. It hung in the debris field like a spider in its web, surrounded by fragments of the destroyed planet. Lights blinked along its hull in patterns that Kira recognized as security beacons. Sensor arrays swept the surrounding space, looking for threats. She was too small for them to detect. One woman in a stealth suit, drifting through the darkness like a shadow. She had done this 100 times in training, approached targets without being seen, without being heard, without leaving any trace of her passage. The program had made her perfect for this kind of work. The outer airlock responded to her genetic signature just as Webb had predicted. The door opened without alarms, without alerts. She was inside. The corridors were cold and clinical, white walls and harsh lighting. It reminded her of the facility where she had grown up, where she had been transformed from a child into a weapon. The memories threatened to overwhelm her, but she pushed them down. There would be time for memories later. Right now, she had a job to do. She moved through the station with fluid grace, avoiding patrols and security cameras. Her body remembered the patterns, the timing, the exact movements needed to pass undetected. This was what they had made her for. This was what she was. The security control room was exactly where the floor plans had indicated. 2 guards sat at consoles, monitoring feeds from across the station. They never heard her coming. They never had a chance to raise an alarm. Kira disabled the security grid with practiced efficiency. The cameras went dark. The motion sensors shut down. The automated defense turrets powered off. Station Echo was blind and vulnerable. She typed a message and transmitted it to the fleet. Security disabled. Begin assault. Outside, Admiral Chen's ships emerged from hiding and converged on the station. Boarding tubes attached to airlocks. Hatches were breached. Soldiers poured inside, spreading through the corridors like a tide of vengeance. Kira moved deeper into the facility, toward the main research labs where Project Resurrection was taking shape. The fighting began behind her. The sounds of weapons, fire, and shouting echoing through the metal halls, but she didn't look back. She had her own mission, and nothing was going to stop her from completing it. The research wing was protected by a separate security system, one that hadn't been disabled with the rest. Kira found herself facing a reinforced door with a biometric lock that required not just genetic identification but also voice confirmation. She stood before the lock, knowing what she had to do. For 3 years, she had been silent. She had communicated through gestures and written messages, refusing to use the voice that they had given her. But now, at the threshold of their most protected secrets, she would have to speak. She pressed her hand against the scanner. She opened her mouth. Subject 7 Alpha 9, she said, her voice rusty and strange to her own ears. Designation: the silence. Access authorization: Omega Black. The door opened. Inside, Kira found something that made her freeze in her tracks. Rows of tanks filled with blue liquid. Inside each tank, suspended in artificial sleep, was a child. Dozens of them. Boys and girls, all between the ages of 5 and 10. All connected to tubes and wires that fed data directly into their developing brains. Project Resurrection wasn't just about rebuilding the program. It was about creating the next generation of weapons. Starting younger, going deeper, making them more powerful than anything that had come before. Kira felt something break inside her. A wall that she had built around her emotions. A barrier that kept her functioning and focused. It crumbled as she looked at those children. At the future that the consortium was building. At the horror that would be unleashed if she failed. She didn't remember accessing combat mode. One moment she was standing frozen, overwhelmed by rage and grief. The next moment, she was moving through the facility like death itself, cutting down anyone who stood in her way. Guards, scientists, technicians, they fell before her without having time to understand what was happening. This was what they had made her for. This was what she was. A weapon, without mercy, without hesitation, without anything resembling humanity. But somewhere deep inside, a small voice kept speaking. Tommy's voice, offering cookies. Webb's voice, promising to bring her back. The voices of the crew, volunteering to fight beside her. Those voices were her anchors, her reasons to remember who she wanted to be. She didn't lose herself. Not completely. Even as she fought, even as she killed, she held on to those voices. She held on to the knowledge that this wasn't who she had to be forever. This was just what she had to do now, in this moment, to protect the future from the nightmare of her past. When it was over, she stood in the center of the research wing surrounded by silence. The tanks were dark, their occupants freed from the machines that had been violating their minds. The servers that held the program's research were destroyed, their data wiped beyond any hope of recovery. Project Resurrection was over. But Kira didn't feel victorious. She felt empty, hollow. She looked at her hands and saw blood that would never truly wash away. Webb found her there, still standing among the wreckage of everything she had destroyed. He had fought his way through the station to reach her, refusing to let her face this alone. "Kira," he said softly, "it's over. We won." She turned to look at him. Her face was blank, her eyes distant. She was still partially in combat mode, still caught between the weapon and the person. Webb walked toward her slowly, carefully. He stopped an arm's length away and held out his hand. "Come back," he said. "You did what you had to do. Now come back to us." Kira looked at his hand. She looked at his face. She saw the worry there, the care, the refusal to give up on her even now. She reached out and took his hand. The warmth of human contact cut through the cold emptiness inside her. She felt herself returning, piece by piece, to the person she was trying to become. She typed a message with her free hand, holding Webb's hand with the other. "I did not lose myself." "No," Webb said, squeezing her hand. "You didn't. You found yourself. The real you. Not the weapon they made, but the person who chose to use that weapon for something good. The children. We need to get them out. Already being handled. Admiral Chen has medical teams standing by. We're going to find homes for all of them. Places where they can grow up normal. Where they can have the childhoods you never got." Kira felt something warm spread through her chest. For the first time since she had entered the facility, she felt like she could breathe. They walked out of the research wing together, hand in hand. Behind them, Station Echo began to burn as demolition charges tore through its structure. The consortium's greatest project was dying, and with it, the threat that had haunted Kira since she first escaped from the program 3 years ago. But she knew this wasn't truly the end. The consortium was vast and powerful. They would rebuild. They would try again. The fight was far from over. For now, though, she had won a victory. She had saved the children. She had destroyed the research. She had proven that she could use the weapon inside her for something good without losing herself in the process. And she had friends waiting for her. A ship that was her home. A crew that was her family. That was enough. That was everything. The fleet retreated from the dying station, carrying survivors and rescued children towards safe harbors. Kira stood at the viewport of the Wandering Fortune and watched Station Echo explode in a silent bloom of fire and destruction. Tommy appeared beside her, holding out a thermal container. "Cookies are still warm," he said. "I kept them in the heating unit." Kira took the container and opened it. The smell of chocolate filled her nose, sweet and comforting and impossibly normal after everything she had just experienced. She took a cookie and bit into it. For a moment, she closed her eyes and let herself be nothing more than a woman enjoying a simple pleasure, surrounded by people who cared about her. When she opened her eyes, Tommy was watching her hopefully. "Good?" She nodded. And then, without thinking, without planning, she did something she hadn't done in 3 years. She smiled. It was small, barely visible, but it was real, and it was hers. Tommy's face lit up like a star going nova. "I knew it," he exclaimed. "I knew you could smile. I'm going to remember this forever." Kira felt something that might have been embarrassment, or might have been warmth, or might have been the beginning of healing. She typed a message on her datapad. "Tell anyone else and I will put you on toilet cleaning duty for a month." Tommy laughed. "Worth it," he said. "Completely worth it." The Wandering Fortune jumped to hyperspace, carrying its crew toward whatever challenges waited ahead. The war against the consortium was just beginning. The galaxy was vast and dangerous and full of people who wanted to use power for terrible things. But the crew had proven something today. They had shown that ordinary people, working together, could stand against the darkness. They had shown that even weapons could choose to be something more, and they had shown Kira that she was not alone. Not anymore. Perhaps not ever again. The stars stretched out before them, infinite and full of possibility. And somewhere in the back of the ship, a woman who called herself the Silence finished her cookie and began to believe that maybe, just maybe, she could have a future worth living for. 2 years had passed since the destruction of Station Echo. The galaxy had changed in ways that no one could have predicted. The consortium, weakened by the loss of their research facility and exposed by the scandal of the rescued children, had fractured into competing factions. Their stranglehold on frontier systems loosened. New opportunities emerged for those brave enough to seize them. The Wandering Fortune had changed too. No longer a simple cargo hauler, It had become something more. A symbol. A rallying point. Ships across the frontier knew that if they were in trouble, if they faced impossible odds, they could call on Captain Webb and his crew for help. And at the heart of that crew stood a woman who still rarely spoke but whose actions had inspired legends throughout the galaxy. Kira stood at the observation deck of a space station called Hope's Landing. It was a new installation, built in the aftermath of the consortium's collapse, designed to be a haven for those who had suffered under their rule. The station was home to thousands of refugees, including many of the children who had been rescued from Project Resurrection. She watched through the transparent walls as ships came and went, bringing supplies and visitors, carrying people toward new lives in new places. The universe was healing, slowly, from the wounds that powerful organizations had inflicted upon it. "You're thinking again." The voice belonged to Tommy Reeves, who had grown from a nervous young cook into a confident man. He had proven himself during the assault on Station Echo and in a dozen other operations since then. Now he served as Kira's unofficial second-in-command, though neither of them would have used such formal terms. Kira nodded. She typed on her datapad, a habit she still maintained even though she spoke more frequently now than she had in those early years. "Thinking about the future. Wondering if we have done enough." Tommy leaned against the railing beside her. "There's always more to do. That's not a reason to feel bad. That's just how the universe works. I know. But sometimes I wonder if I have become too comfortable, too settled." The silence was never meant to have a normal life. "Maybe that's exactly what the silence should have," Tommy said gently. "Maybe the whole point of fighting was so that you could have moments like this. Standing in a station full of people you helped save, watching the future happen." Kira looked at him. In her eyes was something that had taken years to develop: trust, affection, the kind of connection that she had never been programmed to feel. "You have become wise," she typed. "It is annoying." Tommy grinned. "I learned from the best. And by the best, I mean Dr. Wright, who told me that wisdom is just stubbornness with better vocabulary." The moment of peace was interrupted by the sound of running footsteps. First Officer Chen appeared at the entrance to the observation deck, her face tight with concern. "Captain Webb needs you both on the ship immediately. We've received an emergency transmission." The Wandering Fortune had undergone significant upgrades over the past 2 years. Its engines were new, its hull reinforced, its weapon systems expanded. It was still recognizable as the cargo hauler that Kira had first joined, but it had evolved into something more capable, more dangerous, more suited to the missions it now undertook. Captain Webb stood at the bridge command center, surrounded by holographic displays that showed tactical data and communication logs. He looked older than he had when Kira first met him. The stress of leading a quasi-military operation etched into the lines around his eyes, but his spirit remained unbroken. If anything, he seemed more alive now than he ever had hauling cargo through boring shipping lanes. "We have a situation," Webb said as Kira and Tommy entered. 10 hours ago, we received a distress signal from a ship called the Dawn Star, colony transport, registered out of the Helix worlds. They were carrying 300 passengers to a new settlement when they were attacked." "Consortium remnants?" Tommy asked. "Worse." Webb pulled up an image on the main display. It showed a ship, but not like any ship Kira had seen before. The design was angular, almost organic in places, covered in symbols that seemed to shift and change even in the still image. "We don't know who they are or where they came from. What we do know is that they appeared without warning, disabled the Dawn Star's engines, and sent a boarding party. Then all communication stopped." Kira studied the image. Something about the ship's design triggered deep memories, patterns from her programming that she had tried to forget. She typed a message. "This vessel is consortium construction, but modified, enhanced. Someone has been continuing the work that we thought we destroyed." Webb nodded grimly. "That was my fear. We didn't just end Project Resurrection. We scattered it. And apparently some of the pieces found each other." "What do they want with a colony transport?" Tommy asked. "Test subjects," Kira said aloud. Her voice had grown stronger over the years, though she still preferred the precision of typed communication. 300 people, isolated, helpless, a perfect laboratory. The bridge fell silent. Everyone understood what that meant. Everyone remembered the tanks at Station Echo, the children floating in artificial sleep, while machines rewrote their minds. "We're going after them," Webb announced. It wasn't a question. "I've already contacted Admiral Chen. She's sending support, but they're 2 days away. The Dawn Star's passengers don't have 2 days. We need to move now." Kira looked at the tactical display, calculating vectors, timing, possibilities. The enemy ship was in an uncharted region of space, surrounded by asteroid fields and gravitational anomalies. Even finding them would be difficult. Boarding them would be nearly impossible, unless someone went in first. Someone who could pass through their defenses. Someone who understood their methods because she had been built using similar techniques. "I will go alone," she typed. "Initial approach only. Locate the hostages and assess the enemy strength. Then we plan the full assault." "Absolutely not," Webb said immediately. "We've been through this before. You're not doing solo missions anymore. The risk is too high. The risk is higher if we go in blind. 300 lives are at stake. We cannot afford mistakes. And we can't afford to lose you." Webb's voice was firm. "You're not just a weapon anymore, Kira. You're part of this crew, part of this family. Your life matters as much as anyone else's." Kira felt warmth spread through her chest at his words. Even now, after everything they had been through together, his genuine care for her could still catch her off guard. She typed carefully, choosing her words with precision. "I know my life matters. That is why I want to use it to save others. I am not being reckless. I am being practical. I have skills that no one else has. If I do not use them when they are needed, then what is the point of surviving?" Webb stared at her for a long moment. Then he sighed, the weariness of command settling over him like a heavy coat. "Fine, but you take a communication beacon. You check in every 30 minutes. And the moment things go wrong, you call for extraction. No heroics, no sacrificing yourself. We get you out and we find another way." "Agreed." Tommy stepped forward. "I want to go with her." Tommy, Webb began. "I know I can't do what she does," Tommy interrupted. "I'm not enhanced or trained for infiltration. But I can fly a shuttle. I can wait at the extraction point. I can make sure she has a way out when she needs one." Kira looked at the young man who had become her closest friend. His determination reminded her of her own, back when she was first learning what it meant to fight for something beyond survival. She typed a message and showed it only to him. "You do not have to do this. These are dangerous people." "I know," Tommy said quietly. "But you taught me something important. When people you care about are in danger, you don't stand aside. You step up." The shuttle launched from the Wandering Fortune 3 hours later. Kira sat in the passenger compartment, running final checks on her equipment, while Tommy handled the piloting. Their target was 7 hours away at maximum speed, tucked into a pocket of stable space surrounded by gravitational chaos. "You know," Tommy said, over the intercom, "when I signed up to cook meals on a cargo ship, I never imagined I'd end up flying rescue missions into enemy territory." Kira smiled slightly. She had been smiling more often lately, though it still felt strange. She typed a response and sent it to his display. "Regrets? Not one. Well, maybe a few. I never did learn to make a proper souffle. If I die out here, that'll be my one unfinished business. You will not die. I will not allow it." That's reassuring. Terrifying, but reassuring. They dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the asteroid field. The enemy ship was visible on sensors, a dark shape lurking among the rocks like a predator waiting for prey. The Dawn Star drifted nearby, its engines dark, its hull scarred by weapons fire. "No response from the colony ship," Tommy reported. "Life signs are too faint to read at this distance. The asteroid interference is scrambling everything." Kira studied the sensor data. The enemy vessel's design was definitely based on consortium technology, but whoever had modified it had added capabilities that she didn't recognize. Additional power sources, unknown weapon systems, shielding that seemed to fluctuate in impossible patterns. Someone had been very busy in the 2 years since Station Echo. "Take us closer," she typed. "As close as you can get without being detected. Then I go in alone." The shuttle weaved through the asteroid field with Tommy's skilled hands at the controls. He had improved dramatically as a pilot over the past 2 years, practicing during every spare moment until he could fly through conditions that would challenge seasoned veterans. They reached a position within visual range of both ships. The enemy vessel showed no signs of activity on its exterior. All its attention seemed focused inward, on whatever was happening aboard the captured colony transport. "This is as close as I can get," Tommy said. "Any further, and their sensors will definitely pick us up." Kira stood and moved to the airlock. Her combat suit activated, forming a protective layer around her skin. Weapons materialized from compartments in her armor. She was becoming the Silence again, transforming from woman to weapon. But this time, she held onto herself more easily. The anchors that Webb had spoken of were stronger now. The voices of the people who cared about her rang clear in her mind. She looked back at Tommy through the cockpit window. He gave her a thumbs up, his face showing trust despite the fear he must be feeling. 30 minutes, she typed to his console. "If you do not hear from me, leave. I'll give you 35, he replied. "I'm stubborn like that." The airlock opened, and Kira launched herself into the void. She drifted through space with minimal propulsion, using the asteroids for cover, approaching the enemy ship in a spiral pattern that would be almost impossible to track. Her training took over, the ingrained instincts of infiltration and approach that had been burned into her nervous system before she was old enough to understand what was happening to her. The hull of the enemy ship loomed before her, dark and angular. Up close, the symbols that covered its surface were even more disturbing. They seemed to pulse with faint light, and Kira felt something responding inside her own mind. Recognition, resonance. Whatever programming the consortium had given her was reacting to whatever technology had been built into this vessel. She found an access point and began the delicate work of bypassing the airlock controls. The security systems were sophisticated, but they were based on the same principles she had been trained to defeat. Within minutes, she was inside. The interior of the ship was cold and dark. Emergency lighting cast dim red shadows along corridors that had clearly been modified from their original design. Cables ran along the walls, connecting to equipment that Kira didn't recognize. The air smelled of chemicals and something else, something that made her stomach tighten with dread. She moved through the ship like a ghost, avoiding the patrols that she could sense through a combination of training and enhanced perception. The crew members she glimpsed were human, but there was something wrong about them. Their movements were too synchronized. Their faces showed no expression. They reminded Kira of the state she entered during combat mode, but permanent, locked in. These weren't just consortium loyalists. They were subjects of the program, or something like it. People who had been transformed into weapons and then deployed as crew. The thought chilled her more than the cold air of the ship. She found the Dawn Star's passengers in a cargo bay that had been converted into a holding area. 300 people crammed into a space meant for equipment, their wrists bound, their faces showing terror. Armed guards walked among them, checking restraints, occasionally dragging someone out through a door at the far end of the bay. Those who were taken didn't come back. Kira marked the location and began working on a plan. She needed to disable the guards, release the prisoners, and get everyone to the shuttle bay before the enemy could respond. It was possible, but only if everything went perfectly. Nothing ever went perfectly. She was about to move when a voice spoke from behind her. "I knew you would come." Kira spun, her weapons coming up, her body dropping into combat stance. But she froze before she could attack. The woman standing in the shadows behind her wore a consortium officer's uniform, modified with the same strange symbols that covered the ship. Her face was familiar, not from memory, but from records that Kira had studied during her time fighting the program. Dr. Helena Cross, chief scientist of the original Project Resurrection. The woman who had designed the protocols that had been used to transform children into weapons. Subject 7 Alpha 9. "Doctor," Cross said, her voice calm and almost pleasant. "The famous Silence. You've become quite the legend. The one who escaped, the one who fought back, the one who destroyed everything we built." Kira's hands trembled with the urge to attack. This woman had created her, had designed the torture that shaped her childhood, had built the nightmare that haunted her every day. "I'm not going to fight you," Dr. Cross continued. "Not yet. First, I want you to understand what's really happening here, what you're really part of. She should be dead." Kira typed to her suit's communication system, routing the message back to Tommy. "The record said she was executed." "Records lie," Dr. Cross said, somehow seeing the communication. Surely you've learned that by now. The coalition faked my execution as part of a deal. They wanted access to my research. I wanted resources to continue my work. Everyone got what they wanted. Your work destroyed lives, Kira said aloud, her voice hard with fury. You tortured children. You turned innocent people into weapons. I elevated the human species. Dr. Cross stepped closer, her eyes gleaming with the light of absolute conviction. You're proof of that. Look at what you've become. Faster, stronger, smarter than any baseline human. You can do things that would kill ordinary people. You're the next step in evolution, and I created you. You created monsters. I created potential. What you did with that potential was your choice. Some of my subjects became exactly what they were designed to be. Others, like you, chose to fight their programming. Both outcomes fascinated me. Kira's finger tightened on her weapon. One shot. That was all it would take. One shot, and the architect of her suffering would be gone forever. But something in Dr. Cross's expression made her hesitate. The woman was too calm, too confident. She was missing something. You're wondering why I'm not afraid, Dr. Cross said, reading her body language with unsettling accuracy. Let me show you. She pressed a button on her wrist, and a holographic display appeared between them. It showed the colony ship Dawnstar, still drifting in space. But now there were readings overlaid on the image, biological signatures, chemical concentrations, power levels, 300 colonists, Dr. Cross said. All currently connected to a modified version of the neural interface you experienced as a child. I've made improvements. The new version is faster, more efficient, and far more comprehensive. In approximately 4 hours, all 300 of them will complete their transformation. They'll emerge as the next generation of program subjects, ready to serve whatever purpose I assign. The horror of what she was describing hit Kira like a physical blow. 300 people, families, children, all being converted into weapons like she had been. If you kill me, Dr. Cross continued, the process will accelerate to immediate completion. The failsafe is designed to ensure that my work survives, even if I don't. But the rapid conversion will cause significant brain damage. Maybe 80% of the subjects will survive, but they'll be less than what they could have been. Wasted potential. What do you want? Dr. Cross smiled. It was the smile of someone who knew they had already won. I want you to come home. You're my greatest success, 7 Alpha 9. The proof that the program can produce subjects capable of independent thought and action. The others follow orders. You make decisions. That's what I've been trying to replicate for years. You want me to return to the program. I want you to lead it. Think about what we could accomplish together. An army of enhanced humans, guided by someone who understands both sides. Someone who can ensure that future subjects are treated better, trained more humanely, given the chance to become what you became. Kira stared at the woman who had created her. She saw the madness behind the reasonable words, the absolute certainty that her work was justified, the complete inability to understand the suffering she had caused. But she also saw an opportunity. The colonists, Kira said slowly. If I agree to return, you'll stop the conversion? I'll modify it, slow it down. Give them the careful, proper transformation that produces optimal results. They'll still become subjects, but they'll be given the time to adapt, just like you were. And if I refuse, then I trigger the failsafe now. You watch 300 people become mindless drones, and we fight until one of us is dead. Given the security measures on this ship and the forces under my command, I estimate that you have approximately a 15% chance of surviving. I prefer the alternative, but I'm prepared for this outcome. Kira's mind raced through possibilities. She needed to buy time. She needed to find a way to save the colonists, and she needed to get a message to Tommy and the Wandering Fortune. Show me, she said finally. Show me the colonists. Let me see that they're alive. Then I'll give you my answer. Dr. Cross studied her for a long moment. Then she nodded. Follow me. They walked through the ship, Kira hyper-aware of every sensor, every guard, every possible escape route. Doctor, Cross led her confidently, either unaware of or unconcerned by the tactical calculations happening behind Kira's eyes. The conversion chamber was a nightmare made real. 300 people lay on medical tables, connected to machines by wires that disappeared into their skulls. Their eyes were open but empty, their bodies occasionally twitching as electrical impulses forced their muscles to move. Among them, Kira saw children. Boys and girls no older than she had been when they took her. Their small bodies looked fragile against the massive medical equipment. Their faces still held traces of the people they had been before this started. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Dr. Cross said. "The next generation of humanity, being born right before your eyes." Kira felt the rage building inside her, threatening to overwhelm her control. She wanted to destroy everything in this room, to burn this ship down to atoms, to erase every trace of the evil that had built it, but the rage was not her master anymore. She had learned to use it rather than be used by it. She typed a message on her hidden communication device, encoding it in the patterns that only the wandering fortune would recognize. Found hostages. Location marked. Need extraction and assault immediately. Enemy scientist present. Fail-safe system in place. Destroy external antenna array before approaching. The message went out, bouncing off asteroids, reaching Tommy's shuttle, being relayed back to Webb and the crew. "I need time to decide," Kira said to Dr. Cross. "This is not a simple choice. You're asking me to become something I've spent years running from. I understand. Take an hour, walk the ship, see what we've accomplished. Perhaps it will help you see the potential I've always seen in you. And if I try to escape?" Dr. Cross smiled again. "Then the failsafe triggers and we find out which of us is faster. But I don't think you'll run. You never have. That's what makes you special." She left Kira alone in the conversion chamber, surrounded by the slowly transforming colonists. Guards remained posted at the exits, their blank faces watching without expression. Kira moved through the room, examining the equipment, looking for weaknesses. The machines were sophisticated but not invulnerable. If she could identify the central control unit, she might be able to disable the conversion process without triggering the failsafe. She found it after 20 minutes of searching. A server array hidden behind a panel in the floor, connected to every table in the room by fiber optic cables. The failsafe was built into the software, designed to execute if the main systems detected a threat to Dr. Cross. But the antenna that would send the failsafe signal was on the outside of the ship. If it was destroyed before the order was given, the signal would never reach the conversion machines. Kira checked her communication device. Tommy had confirmed receipt of her message. The Wandering Fortune was on its way, along with 3 other ships from their network. They would arrive in approximately 2 hours. She needed to keep Dr. Cross occupied until then. She needed to pretend that she was considering the offer while her crew prepared to strike. The doctor returned to find Kira standing over one of the child subjects, a girl who looked to be about 6 years old. Her hair was dark and her features reminded Kira of herself at that age, before the program had taken everything innocent away. "Her name is Lily," Dr. Cross said. "I've been monitoring her progress closely. She shows remarkable potential. With proper training, she could surpass even your capabilities. You know their names? Of course. Names are important. They give us something to hold on to. Something to shape our identity around. Don't you remember your name? The one they gave you before the program?" Kira didn't answer. The truth was that she had never known her real name. The program had taken her too young, before she could remember anything about the life she might have had. "They gave us numbers," she said instead. "Designations. They told us names were weaknesses, a mistake I corrected in my later work. The subjects perform better when they retain some sense of self. Complete depersonalization leads to reduced initiative and creativity. Controlled identity produces superior results." Kira felt sick. The woman spoke about human beings like they were equipment to be optimized, problems to be solved, products to be improved. "What happened to the other subjects from my generation?" she asked. "The ones who didn't escape? Some died in training. Others were deployed on missions and didn't return. A few were terminated when they failed to meet specifications, and 3, including you, managed to disappear before we could complete the final phase of conditioning. There are others? Others who escaped?" Dr. Cross's expression flickered, a brief moment of uncertainty. "There were. We've recovered one of them. The other remains at large, but we have leads. Once you join us, You might be able to help locate him. One recovered, one still free. Kira filed this information away for later. If there were others like her, others who had survived the program and escaped, she needed to find them, warn them, help them if she could. I'm curious, Kira said, stalling for time. Why continue the work? The consortium has collapsed. The coalition knows about the program. You could have disappeared, started a new life, left all of this behind. Because the work is important. Dr. Cross's voice rang with conviction. Humanity is facing challenges that baseline humans cannot address. Climate collapse, resource depletion, hostile alien life forms at the edges of explored space. We need a new kind of human, stronger, faster, more adaptable. The program isn't evil, it's evolution. Evolution doesn't strap children to machines and rewire their brains. Natural evolution is slow, random, and cruel. What I do is directed, efficient, and ultimately merciful. The subjects of the program are given purpose, meaning, power. What more could anyone ask for? Kira looked at the unconscious children on the tables. At Lily, whose small body was being invaded by technology she could never have understood or consented to. At the parents who lay nearby, unaware that their daughter was being transformed into something inhuman. Freedom, Kira said quietly. They could ask for freedom. The attack came without warning. The first sign was a tremor that ran through the ship, followed by the sound of distant explosions. Emergency lights flickered, and alarms began to wail. Dr. Cross's expression went from confident to alarmed in an instant. What is this? What's happening? My crew, Kira said, and despite the danger she felt a surge of fierce pride. They came for me, just like they always do. Dr. Cross reached for her wrist control, the device that would trigger the failsafe. But Kira was faster. She crossed the distance between them in a blur of motion, seizing the scientist's arm before she could press the button. The antenna is already destroyed, Kira said, her voice cold. No, that's not possible. The defenses were designed by people who trained me. I know every weakness, every flaw, and so does Admiral Chen. The door to the conversion chamber burst open. Consortium guards poured in, weapons raised, their enhanced reflexes making them faster than ordinary soldiers. But Kira was made by the same technology that made them, and she had years more experience. She released Dr. Cross and moved. The fight was brief and brutal. Kira flowed between the guards like water through rocks, striking with precision that left each opponent disabled but alive. She could have killed them. It would have been faster, easier, but she had made a promise to herself after Station Echo. She would kill when necessary, but she would not kill when any other option remained. Dr. Cross tried to run. Kira caught her at the door, pinning her against the wall with one hand. The conversion, Kira demanded. How do I stop it? You can't. The process has already begun. Even if you disconnect the machines, the changes to their neural structure are irreversible. They'll never be the same. Then how do I stabilize them? How do I prevent brain damage? Dr. Cross stared at her with something like confusion. Why would you care? They're subjects now. Resources to be used. Kira's grip tightened. They're people. They have families, lives, futures that you stole. How do I help them? There's a stabilization protocol. In the main computer. It was designed for cases where conversion needed to be slowed or paused. If you activate it, the changes will stop where they are, but the modifications already made will remain permanent. Access code, Cross Alpha 779. Kira released her and turned to the computer terminal in the corner of the room. Her fingers flew across the controls, entering the code, initiating the stabilization protocol. One by one, the conversion machines powered down. The colonists continued to lie motionless, but their bodies stopped twitching. The frantic energy of transformation faded into still silence. Webb's voice came over her communication device. Kira, we've secured the ship. Resistance has been neutralized. What's your status? I have the hostages, Kira replied. They've been partially converted. I've stopped the process, but they'll need medical attention. Specialized care, the modifications they've undergone. I don't know how to reverse them. We'll figure it out, together. Just get them ready for transport. We're sending medical teams now. Kira looked at Dr. Cross. who stood against the wall with an expression of absolute defeat. This woman had created her, had tortured countless children, had tried to build an army of weapons from innocent people. Part of Kira wanted to end her right there, to eliminate the threat she represented once and for all. But another part remembered what Webb had said years ago, about becoming more than a weapon, about choosing who to be rather than what they made her to be. "You're under arrest," Kira said. "You'll stand trial for your crimes, in public, with witnesses. The whole galaxy will see what you did, what you tried to do, and they'll know that you failed." Dr. Cross laughed bitterly. "You think a trial will stop people like me?" The program was bigger than one scientist, bigger than one facility. The technology exists. The knowledge exists. Someone will always try to use it. Then I'll stop them too. As many times as it takes. For as long as I have to. You'll spend your entire life fighting. You'll never know peace. Kira looked at the unconscious colonists, at little Lily, still lying on her table, her small chest rising and falling with steady breaths, at the parents and children and ordinary people who had been caught up in a horror they never asked for. "Peace isn't the absence of fighting," Kira said. "It's knowing why you fight. What you fight for. These people are why I fight. My crew is why I fight. The future is why I fight. As long as I have that, I have all the peace I need." Admiral Chen's soldiers arrived to take Dr. Cross into custody. The scientist went without resistance, her earlier confidence completely shattered. She had believed herself invincible, her work unstoppable. She had never anticipated that her greatest creation would become her greatest enemy. The evacuation of the colonists took several hours. Medical teams worked carefully to disconnect people from the conversion machines without causing additional trauma. Those who were awake were terrified and confused, struggling to understand what had happened to them and what had been done to their bodies. Kira found herself drawn to Lily's table. The little girl was starting to wake, her eyes fluttering open, her small hands grasping at the air. Kira sat beside her and took her hand, providing the human contact that the medical equipment could never offer. "Where's my mommy?" Lily asked, her voice tiny and scared. Kira looked around the room until she spotted a woman who matched the records. "She's right there. She's sleeping right now, but she'll wake up soon. You're safe. You're going to be okay." "Who are you?" Kira thought about the question. The name she had given herself. The name that others had given her. The name that had started in the barracks of a program facility and spread until it made soldiers run in fear. "My name is Kira," she said. "I'm a friend. I came to help you." Lily studied her with the direct intensity that only children possessed. "Are you strong?" "You look strong." "Yes, I'm very strong." "Good." Lily's small fingers tightened around Kira's hand. "Stay with me until my mommy wakes up, please." "I will," Kira promised. "I'm not going anywhere." The cleanup and recovery operation took several weeks. The colonists of the Dawn Star were transported to specialized facilities where doctors worked to understand and stabilize the modifications that had been made to their neural systems. Some of the changes could be reversed. Others were permanent. All of them would require ongoing support and treatment. Lily and her mother were among the survivors who were expected to make full recoveries. The conversion process had not progressed far enough to cause permanent damage. With time and care, they would be able to return to something resembling normal life. Dr. Cross was transported to a maximum security facility to await trial. The evidence against her was overwhelming, and prosecutors were preparing charges that could carry the death penalty. For the first time, a chief architect of the program would face public judgment for her crimes. But Kira knew that Dr. Cross had been right about one thing. The program was bigger than one person. The technology existed. The knowledge existed. Someone would always try to use it. That was why. 3 months after the rescue of the Dawn Star, she stood on the bridge of the Wandering Fortune as it prepared to launch on a new mission. Intelligence reports suggested that another consortium remnant had established a hidden facility in a distant sector. Another attempt to rebuild. Another threat that needed to be eliminated. Webb stood beside her, still the captain of the ship that had become her home. The crew around them had grown and changed over the years, but the core remained the same. Tommy was there, still ready with a smile and a joke. First Officer Chen maintained her calm competence. Old Dr. Wright continued to pretend he was thinking about retirement while showing no intention of actually retiring. "You know, Webb said as the ship prepared for faster-than-light travel. "When I first let you board this ship, I thought you were just a quiet woman looking for a place to hide. I had no idea what I was getting into." Kira typed on her datapad, a habit she still preferred for complex thoughts. "Neither did I. I thought I was running from my past. I thought I was trying to disappear. I had no idea that I was finding something worth fighting for. Any regrets? Many. But not about being here. Not about this crew. Not about the choices we have made together." Webb nodded, understanding what she meant without needing it explained. The wandering Fortune jumped to faster-than-light speed, carrying its crew toward whatever challenges waited ahead. The galaxy was vast and dangerous and full of people who wanted to use power for terrible things. But it was also full of hope, of kindness, of ordinary people who would stand up against impossible odds when they believed in something worth protecting. Kira watched the stars streak past the viewports, each one representing a world, a people, a collection of lives that might someday need protecting. She had been created as a weapon, designed to destroy without remorse, programmed to serve the ambitions of people who saw other human beings as resources to be exploited. But she had become something else, something they had never anticipated. She had become a guardian. They had called her the Silence because when she was finished with her enemies, no one was left to scream. But now that name meant something different. It meant that she would stand watch in the darkness, protecting the innocent, punishing the guilty, giving voice to those who had none. They had ignored her silence. They had dismissed her as broken, as incomplete, as a failed experiment not worth pursuing. They had underestimated the power of a soul that refused to surrender, a spirit that found family when it expected only isolation. Now they feared her. Now they ran when they heard her name. Now they knew that the Silence was not just a woman who didn't speak. She was a promise, a warning, a declaration that the galaxy had protectors who would never give up, never back down, never stop fighting for those who couldn't fight for themselves. And as long as the wandering Fortune flew among the stars, that promise would be kept, forever.